Hello, welcome to another scheme tutorial. In the last video, I introduced you to list objects, and it's perfectly acceptable to represent them using a list statement such as this. But there's another way to represent them that well, it's a little more complicated, but it's a good way to think about lists, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. I'm going to start by exploring the first and rest functions that I introduced in the last video. I'm just going to define this as list2. Okay, so run again. First, list2 gets you the first item. Rest list2 gets you the rest of the list. First rest list2 gets you the first item of the rest of the list. And here's where it gets interesting. Rest list2. This is going to get us the rest of a one item list, which is of course just an empty list. And an empty list is the same as what is outputted by this predefined variable empty. And we're going to be using a lot of that variable in this tutorial. Okay, so the alternate way to represent lists that I spoke of uses the cons function. Now, cons functions have two different parameters. The first parameter is the object that is outputted by the first function when the list is used as a parameter in the first function, and the second parameter is what is outputted when you call the rest function. Okay, so we're just going to be reproducing this list here. So the first item, which is what is outputted by the first function, is 1. And the rest is well, it's another cons statement because it's another list. And what is outputted by first for this cons statement is 2, since it's the rest of the list, as we've seen here. And the rest of the rest of the list is empty. So we sort of have a recursive way of representing these lists. And you can see that the output of this cons statement here has the same output as list2, as we had intended. Okay, so the reason I introduced this, I realize it's a little bit more of a complicated way to look at it, but it will help you to understand the concept of structures. Okay, so what a structure is a type of object which contains other objects, and a cons, or a list, is a good example of that. Now, often structures are defined by the user, and I'm going to, or the programmer, and I'm going to teach you how to do structure definitions of your own, or structure type definitions. Okay, so in order to define a structure type, you call the define struct function. It has two parameters. The first one is the name of the structure type. I'm going to call it x, and the next parameter is the parameters of that structure type, in brackets separated by spaces. It will have the parameters a and b. Now, as soon as you define a structure type, Scheme automatically defines functions for operating that structure type, and they call those functions predicates, but you don't need to know that. So the first one I'm going to show you is the way to the one used to define instances of the structure types you define. So I'm going to define an object of type X called X1, and the way you create one of those is using a function that is essentially the word make followed by a hyphen followed by the name of the structure type. And the two parameters of that function are the two parameters that you specified for the structure type. So the value of A will be 1, the value of B will be 2. And I'll switch to the interactions window to show you a few different functions. Let's say I want to see what the value of A for x1 is. Well, all you need to do is type in x-a, and then the name of the instance, x1, and you get 1, which is the value of A. And to get the value of B, it's very similar. You just type x-b, x1, and you get the value of B. And let's say you're not, for some reason, you're not completely sure if x1 is really of the type X. So you just have to type in x question mark x1, and gives you the pound sign followed by T, which means it's true. Okay, so now we've got that out of the way. I'm going to define sort of a reconstruction of the list type. Now, I'm going to call it cons, but for disambiguation, I'm going to make this C capitalized. And the two parameters, of course, are first and rest. Okay, so let's just make an instance of that of type cons with a capital C. Define my list2, and I'll use the make cons function. Yeah, for now I'll just make it a one item list. Okay, and yeah, as you can see up here, cons defines a list with more than one item using nested cons statements. So that's so I'm going to do the same with make cons. Make cons 2, and of course the rest for the value of rest for this make con statement will be empty because it's the last item, because 2 is the last item in the list. Okay. So now that we have one of those defined, I'll just say cons my list 2 to make sure that my list 2 is of the type cons with the capital C, and it is. And I'll say cons first. Let's see what the first item of my list 2 is, and it is 1. Cons rest my list 2, and of course yeah, Scheme doesn't really know how to output it as a list because it really has no idea that that's what you're sort of going for, but it still contains all the data that you need. So I'm just going to call cons first, cons rest my list 2, and it gives you the 2, of course. And finally, cons rest my list 2, and it gets you an instance of empty. Okay, so that's basically how you define a structure, and that closes this tutorial. Thank you for listening.